Oh, it's such an honor to be with you here today. Hello everyone, Andrew here, and I'm here with the Nintendo World Championships 1990s first runner-up of the 12 to 17 age division, Rich Ambler, everyone.
Nice to meet you. How you doing?
I've been given the fantastic honor to do an interview with you regarding your experiences of the past and what you've been up to recently, all the strategies that you used back in the day, so many exciting things that I'm just so happy to be here, talking with you about today. So yes, please take it away.
Oh, sure. I mean, the 1990 Nintendo World Championships was considered the very first by many to be, the first Tetris World Championship. It was a triathlon event which featured 3 games: Super Mario Brothers, Rad Racer, and of course Tetris. And it was a timed competition kart where everybody started at the same time and ended at the same time. And you would start out in Super Mario Brothers, and you would collect 50 coins as fast as possible. You would then, in turn, take those 50 coins and spend them for a trip around the track in Rad Racer. And once you completed the course in Rad Racer, whatever remaining time you had left, you would have to expend that in Tetris. And of course, the best way to score points in the Tetris is how?
Is by getting Tetrises, of course.
Absolutely, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the Nintendo World Championships Triathlon Gamepak in detail. We're going to discuss the strategies of the NWC and how those strategies came about, as how they pertain to the evolution of the gaming competition from year's end to the climactic Hollywood final against Thor Aackerlund in Hollywood, California.
That's absolutely fantastic. So I think there's so many kind of interesting intricacies to how the contest worked and how it evolved from that first stop of the NWC all the way till the end. So it's going to be really exciting to hear about all those interesting things.
Sure. Earlier on, in the first few cities, it was entirely possible to win a city title without traversing the course in Rad Racer or scoring a single point in Tetris. Earlier on, all he had to do was meet a minimum qualifying score to make the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and then, of course, the finals. So. And going head to head, but all he had to do back then was meet that criteria. But they quickly changed as the strategies were starting to show that people were concentrating on Mario Brothers. And earlier on in the competition, people were trying everything from the turtle tip trick, and trying to manipulate that to get points the best they could, or going to another world, like in the level world 3-1 or something, and trying to.
There's the very famous spot at the end where you can get as many 1-ups as you want, but people would just keep doing it up to 8,000 points, then jumping off, and then doing it up to 8,000 again, and racking up score that way.
Yep, the best they could. I actually got pretty good at doing that. I never really did that in competition, though. I played around with it, and I've been playing Mario Brothers since it came out, so that was one of those things where you get pretty adept. You do get hung up on the turtle, and it doesn't get to stop until it decides it wants to stop sometimes. But, you can manipulate it the best you can, or you can go to another world and you can smack the turtle and hit all the guys, get a 1-up, and just repeat that loop over and over again. Mm-hmm. Things like that. I've seen a lot of different strategies. Those strategies were coming from people that either didn't have any confidence in Tetris, or Rad Racer, or both. You've seen a lot. It ultimately became evident that you had to play Tetris. Mm-hmm. You had to play Tetris. The score curve was just too great at times, 225. And as the competition progressed, people got into Tetris with more time. That's when it became much more clear. Plus, during the competition, after the first few cities, they actually changed the ruling, saying that you have to, in order to qualify, you have to score points in all 3 games.
Right.
So even if you got the Tetris but didn't score a point, it wouldn't count. You had to score points in all 3 games. So that eliminated all these attempts of trying to maximize the score in Mario Brothers. You know, in some cities, some of the winners walk away with scores under 1,800,000, a little over 800,000. You know, those were the kind of scores that you would see earlier on in the cities. You know, but as it progressed and the strategies improved, you would start seeing much larger scores. And I myself, I held the world's record for the NWC cartridge 5 times throughout the year. I technically only give myself credit for 3. And the reason I do that is because I went against a guy named Kenny Welsh in Cincinnati, Ohio, who was breaking my records as fast as I was breaking his. And we were just overturning our scores. I mean, just like bing, 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 bing. I mean, and it was so crazy and chaotic that the MCs had a hard time keeping up with who had the record at the moment. We had Terry Lee Torok and a Frizzle Fry.
Well, it's so cool looking back at the footage that does exist of the competition. He did such a great job announcing it, and that's just crazy to think that that competition existed on the floor there. Because I guess, of course, you couldn't, at home practice the triathlon cart. You always had to go to these events and get as much practice as you could there before hopefully, getting up to the stage and potentially winning that city.
That brings up 2 good points. First of all, a lot of people don't realize that the term in the Classic TETRIS World Championships, Boom Tetris, was coined by Terry Lee Torok. That's where they got that from.
Oh, really?
Yep. The roots of the Classic TETRIS World Championship are strongly grounded in the NWC, the original 1990 event. And here it comes, Tetris,
Yes,
Boom
yes.
Tetris. That's tipping a hat to Terry Lee Torok. Besides, and it's a little bit of a tangent here.
Oh, it's fine.
Besides Walter Day being like the grandfather of esporting gaming, competitive gaming, I think Terry Lee Torok deserves a nod for that as well. He done a lot of events after the NWC, different types of esporting style competitions that weren't necessarily Nintendo related. And in a way, he's a pioneer of esports, of developing esporting himself.
For sure.
Absolutely. So that's that tangent. What you brought up next is that we couldn't play the NWC cartridge at home. You couldn't buy it in the store. You had to buy 3 separate games, and it wasn't quite the same as the Triathlon Gamepak. So your point is very, very valid. We had to practice at home on our manual carts. Our manual carts. Your little Super Mario Brothers.
Nice case for that there, too.
Yes. I love the bit boxes by,
But of course, so you're trying to, take 3 separate games and piece together this experience that you're then expected to get this high score at the competition. That's really fascinating, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we would literally, when we found out what the actual competition time is, they did a little bit of experimenting with that in the first few cities. It was actually a little less than 6 minutes and 21 seconds originally. Really? Yes. By the time we got to Cleveland, though, they had that all ironed out. And, or not Cleveland, but by Cincinnati, they had it all ironed out. Yeah. Just with clarification.
That is so cool to hear because, there's these switches on the front, and I'm like, well, if it's always 6 minutes and 20 seconds, why all this ability to modify the time? But that's amazing to hear that it wasn't actually always 6 minutes and 21 seconds.
Yeah, it was not always 6 minutes and 21 seconds. It was a little less than that. And they basically found out that they needed to have a little bit more time. And also, if you take into consideration that Tetris had only came out that Christmas prior, in the United States, it only came out just prior to the NWC starting, so we didn't have very much time with Tetris. In fact, when we started playing for the Nintendo World Championships specifically, the Tetris was still relatively new for us, so we had to grow with Tetris, and we played a lot of Game Boy Tetris as a result.
Right. Well, why not?
Played a lot of Game Boy Tetris on the road on these things. We drove to most of them. I flew to a couple, but we had to practice on our separate carts. There was no Triathlon Gamepak that we could have access to. We always considered it the Holy Grail because it's the one game that we all wanted but couldn't have. Right. At the time, during the course of the competition, we wanted it. We were hooked. I think the people that excelled the most in that game were the people that really loved the Triathlon Gamepak for what it was, because it was essentially the ultimate competition card of its time. Mm-hmm. It was immaculately designed and executed. You can make cases for this or that, but really the bottom line with it is it was a Triathlon Gamepak that would allow the competitor to breathe in. I mean, there wasn't just an absolute finite thing, or just one specific way to do it off the bat. We're actually evolving the strategies as good game players do. Good game players, they can share with one another. They can show their tips, their strategies, and they can develop the game. You can get more efficient, and that's exactly what happened throughout the tournament. People were just coming up with incredible ideas and executing these brilliant plans to maximize their game and get really highly competitive scores out of it.
That's so cool. Again, just to be able to hear like that, it was the original event where that was possible. And it makes so much sense why people look back on it so fondly. And everyone wants to get their hands on that Holy Grail cart, even though there's only, like 100 of them out there.
Ultimately, we did get those carts. Nintendo said in Hollywood at the post-practice luncheon, Howard Phillips and the gang at Nintendo of America announced that we would all be receiving a copy of the Triathlon Gamepak in the mail.
In the mail? So they couldn't even just give it to you after the competition?
Nope, they had to mail it to us. And
really?
we had to wait a while.
That would have been cool if, like, the one that you played in, like, the finals, they just took it out of the NES and it's like, here you go, kind of thing.
Oh, right. You think that would be a lot easier, but it's not exactly how they did that. I don't remember who the mail carrier who it was. I remember we got it in one of those yellow paper mailers, and it came with the NWC 1990 promotional video, which you can find on YouTube now.
Well, that's cool.
And it came with the game pack and a letter. I don't remember what the letter said. There was some sort of letter in there. I think it just described the contents, and that was really about it. When we looked at the video, toss that aside. NWC. And if you're lucky like me, post Nintendo World Championships, I had a lot of championships friends in the area. Two of my best friends at the time are also finalists. They won Kansas City and Chicago. And so that was three of us that had cards. We picked up a gold card along the way, and that's four. And we also had some good friends like Jeff Falco and Tim Drews and Nick Whittlesbach, and they would come and they would do tournaments with us. We would hold tournaments for local area video game rental stores. I did something for Blockbuster once, and but we did big productions, just like the championships, in the sense that we had, 7 matching monitors facing outward to the audience, and 7 facing inward, plus 2 big screens up on top. So it was set up like Hollywood in a way. And a special device to launch them all up at the same time. And we did this for a few years, and we had hundreds of kids showing up to these competitions, and they were just loving it. Some of them were like, I went to this when I went to this and it was so awesome, and you guys got it here. That is so cool, and then there's those that said, I missed this and I wanted to go, but now it's here and I get to try it. And that was just, to see these kids that genuinely loved it and wanted to compete and just said, man, that was the coolest shit ever.
I had no idea that you had kept it alive in that way, though, because again, unless you had the cartridges and you had all the equipment, TVs and such to be able to do that, I'm interested in hearing more about this device you created that launched them all at the same time. Because I know that I think there was an NES discovered a year or two ago that they think was used in the original competitions that would have hooked all of the NESs together. But that's just amazing that you kept that alive. And again, for people who attended it and were as nostalgic for it, or who weren't able to attend it, like, I wish that they still had things like that all the time. Every summer it should be a thing.
Yeah, we did that. We did that for 3 years, and each year it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, and that was, and those weren't done on repros. They didn't exist. They were done on original equipment. As far as the device I created, I don't have it anymore, but I made it using literally, because I'm not really like electronics expert, but I literally used like 7 controllers. So I had 7 controller wires coming out, and they were all plugged into player 2, because that's how you start the game, is on controller 2.
Yes.
And I had them all plugged in, and I had plugged into a central box that I created out of heavy gauge styrene, and I had stenciling letters and Nintendo lettering. It was all really official looking,
Yeah.
And and it actually used the power and reset button off of Nintendo, an extra Nintendo I had gutted out, and used that. So all I had to do is I had the box there. It was in a central location to reach all 7 units, and all I do is I would just tap that button, and all 7 stations would go off at the same time. And then
that's so cool.
Yeah. Worked out really good that way. I literally had like 7 of the PC boards in it. The controller boards were mounted in a rack that I made, and there was like these fingers that came off the central plunger, and it just went down on the contacts. Just simple. not much to it.
Back then, when controllers too, you didn't have to break the bank to buy like a $70 controller. I know, like, you could get like a box of like 2 NES controllers for not that much, so it would have been easy to create a configuration like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we did a lot of mods back then. I talk about that on the eSporting podcast that I did. I talk about some of the mods I did in there, and that was one of the mods that I did. Just one of them. I did a lot of mods. I had like a zapper that had like the turbo dial from like your NES Advantage on there. It misfired like crazy, but
a rapid fire zapper. Wow, that would be cool to see.
Yeah, it misfired a lot. I had a NES Max where I took the solenoid out of it, and the black disc I kept, and you could push a D-pad in it perfectly. And then he cut off the nub in the back, the rocker for the D-pad. You cut that off, and then you set it, put it all back together. Worked perfectly. Yeah, the
NES Max is a really weird controller. I've seen other mods like that more modernly for that, but that's amazing to hear that even back then, mods were a thing that were alive and well, because you wouldn't read about that in Nintendo Power, people doing these warranty-breaking things with their consoles and controllers.
I through the course of the NWC, I had won so much gear. I had accumulated so much gear from winning and placing, that I could afford to cobble some things here and there. I won. I owned 7 Game Boys. 6 of them I won through the NWC. So I had a lot of them.
Just hand them out to your friends, and you can play multiplayer Tetris. That's the funny thing about the NWC, is that you had Tengen's version of Tetris, which actually had multiplayer. It would have been cool if you're actually facing each other instead of it being 2 separate carts in the NWC. But it's neat the way it worked out in the end. I'd love to hear more about the strategies that you used, though, throughout the competition and how
sure.
they evolved from the beginning. It was like you were mentioning about Mario, of course, how
Right.
in the beginning everyone just wanted to kind of stick in Mario because they thought that's where the points were before it eventually evolved to where everyone was, wanting to get to a Tetris as fast as possible.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear more about the evolution of that as the competition went on.
When they changed the ruling and said that you had to get points in all three games, that eliminated everybody. They just tried to focus on getting through Mario as fast as possible. And the way people were doing that was by going to World, getting their 50 coins in the first coin pipe, going down that cache down there, grabbing those, coming out, hopping on the flagpole, and going through 1-2 as fast as they could to get to the second coin cache pipe, going down there and grabbing those coins as fast as possible. Now, that being said, the individuality in the strategy came about when, how you went about doing that. I think, Jeff Falco is considered to be the man who could get the 50 coins in what is considered to be the old method of Mario now. The fastest. He was the fastest one at doing that. And that's you just fly right through as fast as we can. In a lot of sense, it could probably be best described as a speed run for coins. That would probably be the best descriptor. Is a speed run for coins. Is get as fast as possible in that respect. So people were speed running to get all 50 coins, and nearly everybody at the time was going down that second cache, that second cache pipe and grabbing the coins down there in World 1-2, and that's how the strategy had developed from as early as the first city like Dallas, and Cleveland, where people maybe like Philadelphia, and some of those were just like they were not. Though you could do the Mario method earlier on, where you would just you didn't have to score points in all three games, is what I'm saying, and then you could go ahead and once they changed that rule, then people were doing it as fast as they could, essentially, and that would often lead to going to World 1-2. So no one's seen any sense in going to any other Mario World besides the first two. Ultimately, that changed, though. And I was the first victim of that strategy. So that's what we focused on, and we have an example of how we used to speed run to get 50 coins using the old Mario method, where you go to World 1-2, and that method I have down there, and it's actually, I think it's about 8 seconds slower than the new method of Mario, which is the version where you die in World 1-1. So I was pretty quick at it. That was pretty quick. Jeff Falco, just a little faster.
That's the thing, though, of course, though, is that method that takes you to 1-2, there's just so much time wasted there because you're doing the whole flagpole animation at the end of 1-1, along with all the extra distance you have to cover and such, where the methods that were eventually developed later on really eliminated all that wasted time.
Yes, and people were always trying to do anything that they could to squeeze that extra second or two out of the clock in Mario, because when he got to Rad Racer was a game of time management. It was a game that you could only lose time in. If you bump a car, or you crash, or you don't go up to full speed, or you don't stay at full speed for whatever reason, once you reach top speed, you can only lose time in Rad Racer. And earlier on, people were playing what people thought was just the Rad Racer track, but there's actually 2 tracks. The original course is much more aggressive. And the way you can tell the two apart is that in if you get your coins in World 1-1, all 50 coins, you get the more docile, relaxed track. The cars are predictable. They don't tend to switch lanes very often. And you can actually memorize that. You can go around that track at full speed from beginning to end. The way I characterize that pattern is the two cars at the beginning. They stay in the left and right lane, and they both pass you as you say in the center lane. But through a good chunk of the tournament, through many of the cities, before the new method was found, people were going to World 1-2, and World 1-2 to get their 50 coins. That gave you the alternate Rad Racer pattern, and that one is far more aggressive. The cars move and switch lanes unpredictably. You can memorize it, but the cars are in really, really inopportune positions, especially when you're coming up over hills and around corners, and you don't know when you're going to see them coming, and you got to shift lanes really fast. And I won't say it's impossible to go around that track at top speed from beginning to end, because I've almost done it. There's one area in particular, and if you watch the video, it will show that that's the one spot where you had to like slow down, and that detracts time. You lose time from that. The idea is to get up to full speed as full as possible, stay at top speed all the way around the track, and then ta-da! You've successfully time managed the game, and you didn't lose any time in that whatsoever. And the alternate course can be a really ugly, unpredictable mess, especially in competition. So when the new method of Mario came about, it altered the way we played Rad Racer as well, because people up until that point hadn't been getting their coins in World 1-1, therefore they were not getting the other Rad Racer track to even try. We didn't even know it existed, and almost nobody, if anybody, was going to World 1-3 to get their 50 coins, because they're like, oh, 1-3, you took way too long, And those patterns, those two Rad Racer patterns, are defined by which level you got your 50 coins on. If it's like 1-1 or 1-3, it was the good Rad Racer pattern. If it was, 1-4 or 1-2, it was the not so good Rad Racer pattern. And that became really evident once the new method came out. And things in the championship stayed relatively the same for a little while. There really wasn't much going on as far as people were really maxing out their time in Super Mario Brothers, and weren't really achieving anything until we got to Chicago. And during the weekend in the Chicago NWC, my best friend at the time, Jacob Winch, who was in the 11 and under age group, he was in the top 7, and he crashed. And he crashed over at just the right time. He hit this 60-60 on the point meter. He had just crashed at just the perfect time. He was approximately 10 seconds behind everybody. His Mario game wasn't really that fast as compared to others. So he was behind, and that made him caught up. See, he crashed over and went over the goal line, and we're all like, oh, when he crashed, we were just like, oh no, top 7, and he crashes.
Right.
But he did it at the absolute perfect spot where you would go over the goal line. And then that you were done with the track. You didn't have to get recentered. You didn't have to start up your speed again. And then because people were what we called power sliding to the finish line. You know, we would get on the straightaway on Rad Racer, and we had, you know, the brakes would hit when you passed the goal line, and you'd come to a screeching, dramatic stop in your car, in your Ferrari, and that took time.
Right.
That took time to do. It took a lot of time.
Yeah, again, like you said, it's all about that time management in Rad Racer, where at the end of the track, it slows your car down to 0 speed, and then the competition ends for that part. But then if you hit that tree and you like immediately lose all your speed, just barely hit that finish line, it does save that massive chunk of time.
It's approximately 10 seconds. Yeah, it's approximately 10 seconds. And he did it purely as an accident. And he didn't mean to, but it gets better. He made it into the top 2, where he won his city in the 11 and under, and he did that crash he did it again. So he did it a total of 2 times. So the second time, he never did tell me if he did it on purpose because he realized it was saving him time, or if it was just another accident. Because once we seen on videotape, you know, we're like, oh my God, he crashed, you know. And then my friend Jason, who's a Kansas City champion, he goes, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to have to look at the videotape later. But in the finals for his championship title, he crashed again, and he was approximately, you know, 10 seconds behind again. And that time he crashed, and he did it just like he did before, and he was equaled right back up and caught right back up. So a game that you could only lose time in up to that point is where you could actually gain 10 seconds more if you crashed your car at just a precise moment. And he was the man that came up with that strategy. During his title,
I love it.
during his championship run.
It's so cool that just, you know, you think you've got it all figured out, and then something like that just comes out of nowhere, and it's just all those little intricacies of the Nintendo World Championships. Like, no, you don't go to World 1-2. Instead, you get your coins in World 1-1. Oh, you don't just do Rad Racer normally. Oh, you crash into the tree. Mm-hmm. There's just so much more to it than it initially looks like. It's awesome.
Yeah, you see, at that time in Chicago, the new method had not been discovered yet. It was still the old Mario method. We were still speedrunning Mario, trying to get there as fast as possible, get them 50 coins, and we were getting that old Rad Racer track, you know, the more aggressive one, as a result of getting your coins in World 1-2 instead of 1-1 or 1-3. So, you know, that was huge. 10 seconds in Tetris is an infinity in the Triathlon Gamepak. 10 seconds more of damage that you can get Tetrises with is in the right hands is a devastating weapon. Absolutely. And that's how that came about. And we figured on videotape, when we took it home and reviewed it, we were going to master that. We were going to learn it, and we were going to incorporate it into our strategies. And we weren't the only ones watching that day, though. And some of our fellow, championship friends and alumlines and finalists and friends, they were watching too, and they incorporated it into their strategy as well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
the competition was just never the same from that point. Everyone suddenly had hold of this new information.
Yes.
Even before the internet, it traveled around. That's crazy.
Yes. Until you won your championship, you were what they called a city chaser. You're someone that was competing and trying to win a title in a city. So up until you win that point. So we had a lot of city chasers. You had people that were trying to win and vie for their championship because they wanted that ticket to Hollywood to compete for the World Championship. And, and that's so yeah, it got around really quick, got like wildfire. And everybody was, these days you got the cell phones to record everything. But those of us that were fortunate to have, big boxy VHS camcorders, that's what we were using. I have tons of footage, that has it's just recording the stations, the pods down in the practice pods, where we would practice our scores and continue to work, because we found out through the course of the weekend when we were concentrating on getting better, and we could play more rounds if we stayed in the pods. And the pods are essentially a group of, a couple hundred stations. Mm-hmm. And once you qualified and then you went on stage for the next qualifier, then you didn't have to go on anymore. As long as you qualified for the semifinals, you didn't have to go back up on stage anymore, because they give you the package once you went up there. If you won, if you qualified the score, and then you'd come back on Sunday for the tournament, for the semifinals and finals, and you would have to you'd play there, and then you'd go to the finals if you made the finals, because the finals was really the top 7 scorers, instead of a minimum qualifying score, like the quarterfinals and the semifinals. You did all that. So we found it more beneficial just to stay down in the pods and practice. Plus, it also gave the benefit of not giving out your secrets to everybody.
Try and keep it kind of on the lowdown, for sure.
Absolutely on the lowdown. And I can tell you how that precisely worked against me in particular. That worked completely against me. So we had the power crash, and that was the most exciting thing that had happened in the tournament as far as development go, other than people playing some really stellar Super Mario Brothers speed running, scores. But for the most part, everybody was pretty much in the same spot. It was really just by like a second or a fraction of a second. Mario had been distilled down to that level, going to World 1, 2, and getting the coins in there. But I went to Denver, Colorado, and that's where a guy named Shannon Webster won his city title against me. That weekend I was, one of the veteran city chasers, one of the, a contender, and I was really expected to win that city. People, the staff knows you by now. You've been to, so many cities. They know who you are. You've been on stage 6 times in the finals, and you get in there, and you're on top of the world. I mean, and you're feeling led to believe that your score is, you're going to be unstoppable. I had every reason to believe that Denver was mine until I ran against Shannon Webster. Rumor has it that he is a friend of Thor Aackerlund's, and like Team Thor. And I could never verify that. I never really knew that for certain. But word is that Thor Aackerlund had a hand with Shannon Webster in developing the new method. I credit Shannon Webster for that, just because I got checked for that one. Let's put it that way. I don't know what your channel is, swearing, but I got my ass.
Usually on the lowdown for that, but
let's just say I had my keister handed to me in the worst possible way that weekend as a result of the new method in Mario. And that's where Shannon Webster broke out in tournament. In the finals, he was getting his 50 coins in World 1-1, and it ended up being significantly faster. For me, ultimately, it was about 10 seconds faster. As you can see, one of my speed runs for 50 coins. Again, now if you compound that with Rad Racer's 10 seconds, and then an additional, that's 20 seconds more time. I mean, and for some it's even more. They even more, because their method of Mario was be a little slower. So, but he went and in the top 7, he started playing the new method, and Thor Aackerlund didn't really know what was going on. He wasn't really giving him much attention because he was dying in Mario on the first level, and he did it not once but twice. And it was pretty kind of unassuming. But the odd thing about it is that those out in the crowd noticed that he finished Mario before we did, and he died twice.
Right.
And he got all of his coins in the first world. And I think that some people took note, but weren't really we're just kind of like bugged out. It just didn't really quite, what was that all about?
Right.
Because he wasn't pulling it off. Like I was saying, he was practicing down in the pods, and he wasn't going up on stage during the weekend, so nobody knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. Because he was, centered around, him and his friends, maybe even Team Thor,
Right.
and no one really knew what was going on, in that respect. And in the meantime, everyone's like, "Hey, Rich, you're gonna win that tournament. This is your weekend. You're looking good." And, and Shannon Webster was ready to stomp my guts out, and he did. It was the worst loss in the NWC that I took ever. It was the harshest blow I ever took. It was brutal by all rights and measures, and it was brilliantly executed on his part. His strategy was amazing because, not only did he in the top 7 bust out with the new method, but he went against me in the top 2, and I was a seasoned vet in the top 2. I'd been in the top 2 before. I'd been in the top, 7 before a few times, and he busted out with the new method and against me, and it became evidently clear because if you look at my Mario speed run, approximately 8 seconds slower than the new method, I was making a pretty sweet time in the NWC with the old method. I was one of the most skilled in that area for sure. Jeff Falco probably being better, and and it was devastating, and you could see it on screen because I was on the big screen, he was on the big screen, we had the little monitors down there, and you could see the side-by-side comparison. I remember feeling so great in the top 2 because I heard him die not once but twice, and I'm like, this is gonna be so sweet. This is gonna be easy, and it's like, yes, I'm finally gonna drive this one home.
Wow.
And he had gotten in there with easily 10 seconds more in time, ahead of me, combined with the new Rad Racer strategy that we all knew. And I lost to him because he had more time in Tetris than I did. Mm-hmm. And that was just a humiliating defeat live in front of everybody. Oh man, that was brutal, and it was well executed from a strategic point of not giving away your face card right away.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, here you go again, this game that just seems so simple, and yet this crazy strategy that no one probably ever imagined, even the people who put it together, it just comes out of nowhere. And I think that's just so cool. You couldn't write this, or if it was written for TV or whatever, just the way that you say, it all kind of started out so simple, and then these different things evolved, and there was teams here and groups here and people discovering things together. It's just such a cool story. Yes, there's the game, but then there's also the actually competition side of it that hardly anyone talks about, which is just so fascinating to me.
Well, yeah, you see people in the know that, like in the Retro Zone reproduction cartridge, Thor Aackerlund and I are prominently featured in there, and we discuss the strategies And so that's one way that it got out to the general public. You know, we discuss the strategies on there. Otherwise, some people would be wondering how to even start the cart, not knowing that I even started on controller 2 even, you know. But
Right.
but you see people that are executing the strategies as we described in there, or, you know, seen others that were there executing the strategies as they were, as we described, and getting higher scores. And that is the context, is the history on how that came about, why we did what we did, and when we did it. It was purely about maximizing how much time you had in Tetris, because the best of us were getting into Tetris with 3 minutes, 3:01. Yeah, 3 minutes. 6 minutes, 21 seconds. You figure 21 seconds is chewed up by all the, transition screens.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, as far as actual gameplay goes, I mean, you're getting effectively half of that time in Tetris alone. And Tetris in the Nintendo World Championships Triathlon Gamepak advances every 5 lines instead of every 10. And so it's a little more of an accelerated curve by half.
Right.
And the scoring, Tetris scoring measures are exactly the same. So if you're on 0-0 and you score a Tetris, you get the Tetris value for that. And because you have to get 5 lines, so 4 of them are taken up with the Tetris, you got 1 rollover, and you got to get another Tetris, and, you know, to advance. And then the next levels are 1, 2, 3, because, you know, that's 4 lines, and then he's subtracting 1. Get another Tetris, subtracting 2, and you're advancing the level. So next thing you know, it's like you get 2 Tetris on level 0, and then 1 Tetris, you know, bang, 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 bang for each of the levels, and then it rolls over again. You got to get 2 Tetrises, and then you get, and it just keeps compounding like that. And that's actually what you work at doing really hard. Is you only want to get Tetrises in Tetris. If you have to burn lines, you will not get a world record score unless you are working in a manner that allows you the benefit. Like at the end of it, you know, he obviously ain't going to get a Tetris, but I can get that quick double. I already got that, you know, 4,000,005+ score, and I just drop a little double. And that double at level 14, 15, 16 is worth a lot more and worth it.
Right.
Getting if you can't get in any other points in the last, you know, second or two. So you just those are what I call pickup points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so from a mathematical standpoint, you're looking at level 0-0. You got to get that second Tetris advances you to level 1, and then you have if you get another Tetris on level 1, it will take you to level 2, and then you get another Tetris on level 2, it will take you to level 3, and then when you get to level 4, you have to actually get 2 Tetrises to advance to 5, and then it starts all over again. You see how it rolls over every time.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes into play pretty big. And I spent a lot of time over the years trying to develop abusing that in a manner that was, I'm going to get a Tetris, then I'm going to get a line in advance. Get a Tetris, get a line in advance. And continue that and control that aspect of it. And what I ultimately found was you are better off scoring just Tetrises, because ultimately in the end it adds up, that lines, you know, that lines that you're burning for one line, that's, you know, ends up being somewhere around 4 potential Tetrises that, you know, so you really want to focus on just stacking and getting Tetrises, and the strategy is to get familiar with whatever pattern you're using, because, you know, your Super Mario Brothers score determines what Tetris pattern you get.
So again, another layer of, you know, behind the scenes stuff going on that's not as simple as you'd think just from looking at it.
No. All the way up until the new method, I'd actually say into Hollywood, but it didn't take long for people to realize that whatever they were doing with their patterns in Super Mario Brothers was somehow dictating the pattern, because the Tetris pattern suddenly became much more familiar. I mean, when we were going to World 1, 2, people were getting 39,000, somewhere around 38,000 or something like that. You know, they'd up in the 30s or the 29,000. Speedrunners would have a lot lower score. And because speedrunners were getting everything at exactly, almost nearly always exactly the same score as a result, subconsciously, they may not even been really aware of it, you know, that would help them get, they would see the same Tetris pattern. After a while, you kind of catch on and go, wait a minute. But when it came to the new method of Super Mario Brothers, the scores were reduced drastically because you get 50 coins as fast as possible. You skip just about everything else, like getting big or getting fire flower power and or Starmen or
And the flag, of course, too.
The
getting all
flag.
those points at the end of the stage.
Yep, possible fireworks. I mean, all that.
Oh, yes. Any other time you want them, but not when you're in a race.
Yep. And all that stuff alters your score. And every 100 points between 10,000 and 20,000, so that whole 10,000 block, for every 100 points, there is a Tetris pattern for it. And then it repeats. So pattern 10,000 is the same as 20,000. So pattern 10,100 is the same as 20,100, you know. Or my personal favorite's 10,300 in Mario. And that would mean that 20,300 and 30,300, on and on and on. That's just how the cycle works. So there's a finite amount of patterns in Tetris if you know how to manipulate it, and that's how you manipulate it, is through your Mario Brothers score. Now, when the new method came out and it made everything, it was much more efficient. It was far more easier to control your score and manipulate what pattern that you had. So we would sit back and in Hollywood during the practice rounds, I was aware that if I played Mario the same, I stood to get the same Tetris pattern, but I didn't really realize just what the incrementation was.
Right.
At that time, but I was aware that, you know, my Mario pattern was dictating. I was seeing the same pieces in Tetris as a result. Especially the opening moves. In my pattern 10,003, it's a J preceded by like 3 S pieces, you know.
and that really gives you a lot of power, though, to, you know, at least if you don't have the whole thing memorized, to kind of know what's coming up. And you can kind of, you know, try and create the same formations each time, and it takes a lot of, you know, the mental thinking away of, you know, the randomized pieces that you're used to when you play a normal game of Tetris.
Yeah. So most people didn't really realize that. I still to this day, I don't know if Thor was aware of it on any level at all. One of the interviews I seen him in, he didn't seem to know that. I honestly don't know. But yeah, it became clear after the championships precisely how to what incrementation. The 50-point mark does nothing, you know, and it's every 100 points, you know, and then you just experimented. We just experimented post NWC, and then we seen, oh, okay, and then they repeated, you know. So there was a finite amount of patterns. But as far as Hollywood went, I was only aware by that time, because of the new method, that how I played in Mario, if I played the same every time, that's how it, you know, I'd stand to get the same pattern. And out of the practice sessions, we had 14, 15 practice rounds. I was practicing solely on that, and I was getting, you know, consistently over 3 million points. You know, it's something that I hadn't done in tournament prior to that. So, you know, I've been getting, you know, high 2,000 or 2,700,000, 2,600,000, you know, but in the practice rounds, I was getting so familiar, and I was getting the same Tetris pattern over and over again, and that I was taking it upon myself just to keep doing that, so that when I went into competition, I know precisely what I would have to do. And after a while, you become familiar with when the droughts are. When the long bars are going to drought.
Yes.
When the build up, when to pound down those Tetrises, when to rebuild again, and it's kind of a cycle that you have to repeat over and over and over again until you run out of time. And that's precisely the avenue that I took, and it paid off for me big time in Hollywood. I was able to in the finals. I was able to get into the top 7. I had a really confident score, a very competent, good score, and that it was all as a result of I didn't have time to memorize a whole pattern, or much less what I call now organically memorizing a Tetris pattern, because I don't memorize every piece verbatim. I memorize based on the topography of the stack,
right,
and my natural playing ability. Where I most likely would put a piece is where I'm always going to place it the same way. But what I call adjustments happen sometimes when you're developing your pattern, you're playing organically. You have to make an adjustment or something to keep the stack from becoming unstable, or developing spires, and that's where you have to make an adjustment in the pattern and then continue playing. So I had thousands and thousands of hours of footage post NWC on developing patterns, for every score from 10,002, 10,003, 10,004, and even 10,005. At one time, I could play any of those games, and so 50 coins. The base coins are 10,000 points. That's the minimum amount of points you can get in Super Mario Brothers. That's getting 50 coins, nothing else. But along the way, you can squash a Goomba here or there if you like a particular pattern over another, like I do. The current world record is a 10,004 pattern, 10,400, and I broke Frank Westfall's record. It's not official. I will make it official. Is 10,300. And I think that while you could probably get a 4,000,005 score a little quicker or a little easier, you could obtain it with practice. You could do it with the 10,400 pattern. Seems like the right choice off the bat. I actually think that with a little bit of tenacity and patience, you can get pattern 10,300, which I have, which I broke Frank's record with that. So, and higher. I've had much higher scores in the NWC. I've had upwards 5,400,000 verified. And there was a 6 million score that I got, but that was unverified. It's in, if you look in the instruction booklet, it's in there.
Oh yeah.
But I don't consider that because it's unverified. So, but
what's in the instruction booklet there is actually how we came to talk to each other, because I showed that on camera and I pointed out the things in there, and the tips and tricks that are in that instruction book are actually from you. Yeah. So it's awesome to be able to actually hear them from you as well. And there's a lot of other things, of course, that weren't mentioned there that have just been so fantastic to hear. Yeah.
I remember the first time I got that, someone came up to me at a convention, and they're like, "Would you sign this for me?" And I'm like, "What is it?" And they came up with this box, and they were showing me everything, and I was just blown away because I had no idea these existed. So that was You know, and then I opened it up and took a look at it. And I'm just like, wow, you know.
I think it's great that the reproduction exists. I mean, it's not like it's going to be mistaked with the original, but so that other people can, of course, you know, now enjoy what it was like back then. So,
just for clarification, when I sold my original Nintendo NWC, I also had a lengthy letter sent with it to the person I sold it to, and that's the letter that Retro USB had gotten a hold of, and that's where all the information quoted in it came from, all the tips and tactics. So I was kind enough to give the next owner of the cart, you know, a lengthy.
Yeah. Well, that is nice, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had no idea that would be taken and put in a production repro cart package. No idea that would ever happen, much less be in a Nintendo game, especially even if it's a repro, you know, of a pretty high profile game.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So yeah, Tetris is one of those things organically. Probably the golden nugget for Tetris is learning how to get a certain pattern, and by manipulating your Mario score, you know, you can achieve that. You know, 10,000, 10,002, 3, 4, 5. You know, I'd say anywhere between 2,000 or 10,200 and 10,400. Those are really the sweet spots for patterns. Those are the most common ones you're going to find because people have their preference, and it's within. I call it the sweet spot because there's only a finite amount of Goombas, and if you have to go out of your way to squash a Goomba, you're probably detracting from your time. So you really don't want to have to do that. I've got friends that live by 2005, so yeah, more, and they're good at it. So that's
why not?
That's more power to them, you know. And I've seen some pretty amazing scores achieved on any of those patterns. Really, the sweet spot, and I think that, you know, also the patterns tend to be much more favorable. You know, you have what I would call maybe like a stable set of pieces. You know, if you're a competent Tetris player, you'll figure it out on just how maybe you should be laying those pieces too. You know, but beyond that, you know, if you're talking about creating world record scores and what kind of memorization processes, I'm not saying that what I do is the right thing to do when it comes to memorizing a pattern. It isn't the only way. If anything, it's custom tailored to my learning ability. What helps me achieve my goals, you know, adequately, I guess. And that's how I do it. So I memorize the topography. I memorize as a result of playing a pattern over, well, technically 30 years now. You know, when the pieces are, when the straight lines are coming, when you're taking Tetrises, when you have to stack, you know, when the droughts are, it's like second sense to me now. I mean, I still don't have every piece memorized per pattern, but you know, what I like to do for like exhibition is I'll build it right up to the top at the beginning, and it'll look like I'm going to lock out, and I'll squeak that straight piece all the way over and just turn it where it doesn't look like you can even do that, and drop it down. And I tell you, when I'm playing for exhibition in front of people, that gets them every time.
That would be cool.
They're all like,
You actually have a Twitch account where people can probably come and see you obviously play, practice Tetris, practice the NWC, of course.
Oh, sure. I'm going to have a really big episode somewhere around the turn of the year here, where I'm gonna be, because the 30th anniversary of the Nintendo World Championship is coming out. I'm back in the public. I'm actively practicing again for the Tetris Classic World Championships, and this year I would have liked to have made it, but it just wasn't in the cards. But next year, next as early as this spring in April, I might be able to qualify if they have one in Milwaukee, and go from there and see. But next year is the year I will be there in Portland, whether I have to qualify it or if I'm already pre-qualified from a qualifier or not. So I'm back out in the public. I'm doing my thing. My Twitch account is, like you were saying, is sort of my home right now, and I'll be playing a lot of NWC, playing a lot of Tetris, and practicing really hard with that. So, yeah, please give me a follow. I'd love to hear from you, any of you.
They'll definitely be linked down below. Probably try to put a thing on the screen as well. If you would like to, list off any other social media or things you'd like people to follow, it's absolutely fine.
I have a real great crowd there. I don't focus on followers so much as friends. That's a big thing for me. I don't have a huge following yet, but I'm an affiliate, and the people that I associate and that take time out of their day, their time to come see me play and interact with me, we have a great time. I always do. I'm always talking about something while I'm playing a game. Whether it's the NWC or just about gaming in general, retro gaming. One of the beauties of being on Twitch is that I can share my extensive knowledge of retro gaming history live on camera in front of people anytime I feel like getting up and doing it.
Right.
And I do just that. I just like to share as much as possible on there. I have a lot to share. I mean, technically, I've been with gaming since first gen console gaming and the golden days of the arcade, and all the way up through the 6th generation of console gaming. So I had a very, very long tenure professionally in gaming, not necessarily competitively, but either in the industry or as a professional gamer in some manner. So, it's I've had Tetris was the game that, or the Nintendo World Championships cartridge, is also that game that started my gaming career. And back in those days, it was incredibly hard to get recognition or anyone to really take seriously as a pro gamer, based on a console that was literally sold to America as a toy. Really.
Well, they wanted to ignore or separate themselves from Atari, of course, and the word video game had been kind of dirtied by them. So I guess that's kind of what they tried to do, right? Yeah.
That's precisely
made it look
right.
like a VCR.
Yeah, it wasn't a video game console. It was an entertainment system.
That's it.
Yes, and they weren't carts. They were game packs.
Right.
I mean, I talk about the Nintendo World Championships Triathlon Gamepak, not the Nintendo World Championships cartridge.
It's really interesting because Triathlon Gamepak isn't something I had heard of it being referred to until we started talking. Was that something that other people called it back then, or where exactly did that name originate from?
Well, Nick Whitlisbach and I and other NWC finalists and winners, we always call it Nintendo World Championships Triathlon Gamepak. Those officially, what we would call it. The official terminology is triathlon, because it was just that. And
right. That's a good point.
It's a really long name to say. Like 1990 Nintendo World Champion, first runner-up. If I decide to add the 12 to 17.
Yeah, it gets really long. It does.
Champion. Championships champion. So
regardless, though, you were a part of something incredible. I mean, runner-up or not, I think it's fantastic that you were able to experience that. You have these incredible stories. People would never probably imagine, oh yeah, I went around to a bunch of different cities. It was probably the same all the way through. But no, you have the tales of just how crazy it evolved from that first city all the way up to Miami, all the way up to, the actual finals. And I think that's so incredible. There's just so much more there than just this game pack with 3 games in it.
it was a real phenomenon. If you think about the strategy of the NWC, it wasn't made by just a person or a few or a handful of people. So many people throughout the country had a hand in developing it, and it's so like social conscious sort of
Right.
thing. It's really stellar and amazing. And to be able to been a part of that has been absolutely one of the greatest joys of my life, having witnessed that and took into it and ending where I ended. I mean, I didn't win the world championship title. I lost by a Tetris to Thor Aackerlund. If I'm going to lose, it might as well be the Thor Aackerlund, because he is the greatest Tetris player of our day. And that was me. I lost to him by a Tetris and went head-to-head against him. And I did pretty well for myself post-NWC, being the runner-up of the world at the time, and for quite a while, actually, and having the prestige of being, known as being one of the best gamers of my day at Nintendo, and moving on professionally and getting paid and actually doing a little, some consulting and reviews of games for, local and private distributors, things of that nature. And
that would be cool. I mean, again, it doesn't just end at the competition. It's awesome that it led to opportunities past that as well.
But as far as getting back to the Tetris strategy, I wanted to add into that strategy that there's a few things that you can do as a Tetris player to optimize your stack and your time. The best way I could define this is speed running Tetris for the NWC. And what you need to do is focus on keeping your stack kind of you don't want to obviously have spires, but you want to have a good solid stable stack where the topography is pretty level. Flat playing is what I like to refer to it. It's kind of playing flat, instead of having the L and the J brackets, the short side at the base, you have the long sides, you see, things like that, because you're trying to get the lines across and build a stack that way. And stacking up for the Tetris. But the other things you want to look for, especially if you're working towards World Championship scores, what you need to focus on is, if you don't have to have a piece in the immediate place, drop it straight down. Because that's faster than moving left and right. So if you can minimize your movements from left to right as much as possible, like I don't need to necessarily, that square, it doesn't need to go anywhere and I can go straight down, drop it straight down. And the best I have been able to gather is that you have somewhere around a minimum of 10 to 12 pieces. If you drop them just straight down, that affords you just enough of a second or two in time that you are effectively gaining to potentially get that last Tetris in. Another thing is, when it comes to like straight pieces, most people traditionally put their well to the right side of the stack. So it makes sense not to take your straight piece, turn it so it's vertical, and move it all the way over to the far left, because that takes even more time. And as far as I'm concerned, that would be more of a cardinal sin when you're trying to develop, save time, because that actually takes more time, because not only are you turning the piece that way, but it's got to go all the way over to the left on top of it. And if you watch a lot of players, they tend to put that straight piece, if they don't have anywhere else to put it, they'll line it up like that over on the far side, and that doesn't really do you any good, because not only are you losing time turning it and moving it all the way over and then dropping it down, and you'd be better off if you could turn it lateral, like horizontal, and then drop it straight down if you can. because then you're getting that straight piece into the stack and you're making more use of that piece, and you're not moving it way to the left and then dropping it and taking up more time. You're actually saving time by just turning it and dropping it straight down. Or if it has to go over left or right a little bit, that's fine as well. I mean, absolutely.
You're so right. I mean, when you see that the four-long one, your immediate reaction is vertical. So I've done that myself. Yeah. I just put it against the side vertically. But wow, that's actually some great advice, honestly.
Sure. That's I've been playing the game for a long time. It's supposed to be in the Tetris Masters Ecstasy of Order, according to Robin Mahara. He sent me an email on Nintendo Age one time, and he said, we've been trying to find you for that, and we wanted to have you in it, but we couldn't find you. And of course, I didn't want to be found. So I didn't get to be in that, but I was supposed to be in there with Thor and the gang, because like I said, the Tetris Classic World Championships are strongly rooted in the NWC, and we were the first Tetris Masters, essentially.
For sure. I think it's so great that, you are here and you're sharing your story of the past with people again, and I think it's just, keep those memories alive, right? I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. The same theory applies to, that's what we're talking about essentially, is Tetris theory. If you're looking at the L and the J, or even the T piece on the long side of it, if you have to shift it all the way over, you got to do what you got to do sometimes, obviously, in Tetris. And sometimes Tetris decides for you. Tetris actually plays you. But, but if you're working on world record score, it is a pattern that you have absolute control over, that you have worked very hard to cultivate and perform over and over again until you have, order,
right.
And that is where it becomes sublime, and that's pretty much this is well beyond like Tetris 101, T spins and S spins and things of that nature. This is a more organic thought theory into how you should play Nintendo World Championships Tetris. Some of this can apply to regular Tetris as well, and I do incorporate a lot of that stuff when I play Tetris. I've maxed out, like Thor Aackerlund. Him and I had maxed out in the 90s. I started maxing out after the championships, and I had maxed out from both 18 and 19 starts at one time. I was pretty good. I wouldn't say I was as consistent as I don't think anybody's ever is as consistent in Tetris as they would like to be. Some days, you can just put it away, and other days it looks like you just started playing the game. Tetris is just that way. Tetris ebbs. It really does. So, and then having put away the controller and put the controller down and hadn't played Tetris in nearly a decade. It was about 2009. I put down gaming. You never quit gaming. You never do. I mean, as far as doing anything professional, being seen publicly, that was pretty much all played out and done with. And for a while there, I just didn't want anything to do with that. I was just pursuing other things in my life. And, like many things in life, things come around in a cycle. And this is the next cycle, and I'm really excited to be back. It's really exciting to be involved with the retro gaming culture, because I have met just the most fantastic people. I'm really blessed to have been, meet so many new and exciting and interesting and enthusiastic people about games that are, 30 years old. And it's nice to be able to share, my stories and my experience with younger generation. And really, to me, I couldn't ask for anything else. That really is just, I am just wholly blessed when it comes to that. Absolutely.
And we're so thankful for that as well. It's just so great to hear people talk about those things from the past and to be able to share those stories. I wish everyone from 30 years ago was doing that. I love hearing about, the rise of Nintendo and stuff. And of course, the World Championships 1990 being a massive part of that. It's so great that you're back and around. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. I really enjoy your content, and I definitely look in from time to time. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And the honor's all mine. This is incredible that that you'd want to be on an interview on my channel. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. Any last things you wanna mention before we wrap up?
I think we pretty much hit it on the head there.
All right, that's awesome then. So thank you again so much, Rich Ambler, everyone. This has been a lot of fun, and yeah, I hope to see you around doing lots of things and hear from you again. So.
All right, sounds good. Sounds really good.
Thank you everyone for watching, and see you later. Thank you everyone once again for watching, and another massive thanks to Rich Ambler for not only being part of this interview, but also for providing a majority of the gameplay footage that was shown throughout. Since recording this interview, Rich Ambler has actually achieved the Nintendo World Championships 1990 high score world record, and we have the footage here of that to show you. It was actually something that he achieved live on his Twitch channel, so I'll have the link on screen. I definitely recommend checking that out. He's always trying to get better at the Nintendo World Championships, achieve higher scores, practicing Tetris, lots of cool things going on there, so I highly, highly, highly recommend checking it out. Without further ado, after hearing all of those strategies, it's time to see a master play the Nintendo World Championships 1990.
Boost. Morale kicker. That one. It's working! It's working! Come here. Love.
My cat's down by my feet. I'm wild crazy all over the road. Trump gone marshmallow rock star. Yeah! Woo! Yeah! World record, baby! New world record! Woo! New world record!